You watch a confident person take charge despite their obvious lack of actual skill. Their boldness masks a hollow center that everyone else seems to clearly see. It is easy to resent this pattern in a supervisor or a local politician. Yet, we often find ourselves following the loudest voice when we feel deeply afraid. The brain chooses the illusion of a path over the reality of being lost. By the end, you will understand the primal trade you make for perceived safety. We often mistake the presence of high confidence for the presence of high underlying competence. The human brain is an ancient machine designed to seek out signals of social dominance. Evolutionary psychology suggests that our ancestors survived by following individuals who projected an image of absolute certainty. In a dangerous environment, a hesitant expert was often less useful than a decisive, loud amateur. We carry this legacy into modern boardrooms, where bold assertions are rewarded with immediate professional trust. Labels like incompetent in our title describe a specific psychological pattern, not the value of people. This pattern is a survival trap where the mind prioritizes social cohesion over factual or technical accuracy. Most people first notice this pattern in someone close to them, such as a local community leader. You see them make sweeping promises that defy logic, yet the crowd nods in collective agreement. This behavior is adaptive because it reduces the immense psychological burden of individual decision-making and fear. By following a confident figure, the group offloads its anxiety onto a single, highly visible person. The leader's lack of skill is secondary to their ability to provide a sense of direction. Sigmund Freud noted that groups often regress to more primitive states when they seek a powerful father. In this state, the group values strength and conviction far more than it values truth or nuance. We see this when a friend takes charge of a group trip despite having no sense of direction. Everyone follows them simply because they spoke first, and they spoke with the most convincing, steady tone. This is not a moral failure of the group, but a deeply embedded biological safety mechanism. The mind fears the vacuum of leadership more than it fears the consequences of a wrong turn. This phenomenon is closely linked to the Dunning-Kruger effect, where the unlearned cannot see their own gaps. A person with limited knowledge lacks the very tools required to realize they are performing poorly. Their confidence is genuine because they are psychologically shielded from the reality of their own many limitations. Society perceives this genuine belief as a sign of hidden strength rather than a symptom of ignorance. We are biologically programmed to find conviction attractive because it suggests a lack of internal doubt. Doubt is a luxury of the expert, but it is a poison to the ancient survival mind. This is where the pattern becomes difficult to ignore in our daily professional and social lives. We witness people rising through hierarchies not by solving problems, but by projecting a total lack of fear. The workplace becomes a stage where the performance of authority is more valuable than actual productive work. Most people first notice this pattern in someone close to them, like a sibling who always dominates conversations. They control the room by sheer force of personality, leaving more capable voices in the quiet shadows. The group allows this because the alternative is a messy, uncoordinated struggle for a shared social reality. What looks like a flaw in the system is actually the system working exactly as evolved. It is a hidden psychological trap that ensures the most certain voice becomes the most powerful voice. Our modern world is built on complex systems, yet we still use tribal signals to choose our guides. This mismatch between our biology and our environment creates a recurring cycle of organizational and social failure. The person at the top is often the one least equipped to handle the nuance of reality. Yet, we continue to hand them the keys, because their certainty stills the trembling of our own minds. What looks harmless here quietly reshapes everything later as we look deeper into the origins of power. The pattern is a mirror reflecting our own desperate need for a shelter against the unknown. We are not victims of bad leaders as much as we are participants in a psychological trade. Understanding this requires looking past the individual and into the mechanics of the human survival drive. The rise of the unskilled leader begins in the formative years of childhood and social learning. Children observe early on that the loudest voice in the playroom often dictates the game's rules. Parents often mistake a child's bossiness for natural leadership and reward the behavior with positive attention. This conditioning teaches the developing ego that social dominance is a primary path to safety and love. Psychologist Erik Erikson noted that the struggle for autonomy and initiative shapes our adult sense of power. If a child learns that taking up space prevents them from being overlooked, they solidify this trait. Evolutionary pressure also plays a silent, massive role in why the mind adopts a persona of authority. In our ancestral past, the cost of an indecisive leader was often the death of the tribe. Those who could project an aura of absolute command were more likely to keep the group cohesive. The brain learned that the feeling of being led was more comforting than the fact of competence. Fear-based adaptation further ensures that we gravitate toward individuals who seem to have no internal doubts. When we are children, we look to adults as omniscient gods who can solve any looming problem. As adults, we carry a residual longing for that same sense of total, unshakable parental protection. We project this childhood need onto our bosses, our managers, and our public political figures today. The incompetent leader is often someone whose own childhood defense mechanism was to never show any weakness. They learn to mask their insecurities with a layer of performative, high-octane confidence that fooled even themselves. Most people first notice this pattern in someone close to them, like a father who never apologized. His word was law, not because he was always right, but because he could not survive being wrong. This origin story is not one of malice, but of a mind trying to maintain its structural integrity. The individual becomes a leader because they are the most desperate to control their immediate social environment. Social learning reinforces this by showing us that the bold get promoted while the thoughtful are forgotten. We watch peers get ahead by over-promising and under-delivering, yet they are rarely held to any account. The mind observes these rewards and begins to replicate the behavior to ensure its own survival. This creates a cycle where the most anxious people become the most dominant people to soothe themselves. What began as a way to get a toy in a sandbox becomes a corporate strategy. The origin of this behavior is rooted in the fear of being seen as small or insignificant. By occupying the seat of power, the individual ensures that no one can ever truly challenge them. It is a psychological armor that protects the vulnerable child hidden deep within the adult's powerful frame. We follow them because their armor makes us feel like we are also protected from the world. This is the point where the behavior stops being an act and becomes a biological reality. What started as a childhood defense mechanism matures into a lifelong cage of social and mental performance. The individual is trapped in a role where they can never admit they do not know the way. Every challenge to their authority is felt as a lethal threat to their very sense of self. This creates a hidden tension that hums beneath every office meeting and every family holiday gathering. The origin of power is often not found in strength, but in a deep, shivering internal vulnerability. We build our social structures around those who are the best at hiding their own human fragility. The cost of this mental shortcut is a society led by those who are running from themselves. Understanding where this comes from is the first step towards seeing the invisible strings of power. What looks like a strong leader here quietly reshapes our collective future into something far more brittle. The internal drive for dominance manifests outwardly, a calculated performance of social and emotional certainty. In the workplace, this often looks like a manager who dictates every detail without consulting the experts. They use aggressive body language and a sharp, final tone to shut down any potential for collaborative debate. This social expression is a way to claim the psychological high ground before any facts can emerge. By dominating the physical and vocal space, they force others into a submissive and reactive social role. Most people first notice this pattern in someone close to them, such as a highly controlling friend. This friend might insist on choosing every restaurant and every activity, dismissing your suggestions with effortless ease. They are not necessarily trying to be mean, they are simply managing their own internal need for order. By controlling the group's social agenda, they maintain a fragile sense of safety and personal social value. In romantic relationships, this pattern can appear as a partner who always assumes the role of the fixer. They provide unsolicited advice and take charge of your problems without being asked to help you. While it looks like care, it is often a way to maintain a hierarchy where they are the source of wisdom. If you reject their help, they may react with disproportionate anger because their status has been quietly threatened. Within families, the incompetent leader often uses guilt or tradition to maintain their position of absolute power. They may not have the best life skills, but they demand a specific type of respect from everyone. The expression of their authority is a shield that prevents family members from seeing their very real failures. We see this same dynamic in social circles where one person always speaks over the others in conversation. The group often allows this because challenging the dominant individual creates a scene that everyone wants to avoid. The social cost of confrontation is higher than the social cost of simply letting them lead the way. This creates an environment where the most abrasive personality is rewarded with the most social influence and control. We often first recognize this pattern in others by the way they handle a minor public crisis. When a flight is delayed, the person who stands up and yells at the gate agent is performing leadership. They are signaling to the surrounding crowd that they are the ones taking action in a helpless situation. Even though their yelling achieves nothing, the crowd often looks to them for clues on how to react. The social expression of the hidden self is a constant game of signaling and reading primal status cues. We are drawn to those who act as if they have a plan, even when the plan is non-existent. This dynamic creates a layer of social theater where the best actor is the one who gets promoted. What looks like a strong personality is frequently just a person who is very good at taking up space. They have mastered the art of looking busy and sounding important without actually producing any tangible results. In friendships, this can lead to a slow buildup of resentment that eventually destroys the entire social bond. The person who always leads eventually runs the group into a wall because they cannot accept outside input. The social expression of unearned power, a cycle of grand gestures followed by very quiet, hidden failures. We witness this when a visionary startup founder burns through millions without a single working product or service. Their confidence was the only thing holding the social structure of the company together for so long. When the mask finally slips, the group is left wondering how they could have been so blind for years. The answer lies in our own psychological need to believe that someone, somewhere, actually knows what to do. We would rather follow a confident fool into a storm than stand alone on a calm, quiet shore. The structure of modern life has become a massive soundboard for the most confident and least qualified voices. In the past, physical proximity and small communities acted as a natural filter for those who lacked substance. If a local leader made consistent, visible errors, the tribe could quickly see the gap between word and deed. Digital culture has stripped away this friction, allowing personas to exist entirely independent of their actual real-world results. Modern technology rewards the first and the loudest rather than the most accurate or the most deeply considered. Social media platforms are built on engagement metrics that prioritize high-energy certainty over the quiet nuance of expertise. The algorithm does not care if a leader is competent. It only cares if they are captivating and viral. This creates a digital environment where performative authority is the primary currency for gaining and holding massive public attention. Most people first notice this pattern in someone close to them, like a relative who follows influencer gurus. They see a charismatic figure online promising a path to wealth or health without any real medical credentials. The relative is drawn in by the leader's absolute lack of doubt, which feels like a lighthouse in a storm. Modern society has become so complex that the average person feels a constant, low-level sense of intellectual drowning. To cope with this complexity, we outsource our thinking to anyone who sounds like they have a simple answer. We are quietly rewarded for this behavior because it allows us to feel part of an informed, powerful group. The workplace has also evolved into a space where visibility is often more valuable than actual high-level technical output. Remote work and digital communication allow for a version of leadership that is purely based on polished professional optics. A manager can use slick presentations and assertive emails to mask a total lack of strategic or operational depth. Cultural expectations now demand that we fake it until we make it, effectively institutionalizing the performance of unearned power. We have reached a point where admitting you are unsure is seen as a failure of your personal brand. This pressure intensifies the survival instinct to double down on a lie rather than face social or professional demotion. Society denies the psychological cost of this pattern by celebrating the disruptor who acts before they think or plan. We romanticize the figure who breaks the rules, often forgetting that the rules were there to prevent total system collapse. By the time the cost of the incompetent leader is revealed, the system is often too broken to recover. We see this in corporate scandals where a single charismatic figure leads thousands of people into a total financial abyss. The modern amplification of this pattern makes it harder for the quiet, competent individual to ever be heard or seen. The signal-to-noise ratio is so skewed that truth is often buried beneath a mountain of confident, high-speed misinformation. We are being conditioned to respond to the vibe of authority rather than the substance of the actual governing logic. What feels like a choice in whom we follow is actually a response to a carefully engineered psychological environment. Technology acts as a megaphone for the primitive ego, allowing it to scream across the globe in seconds. The result is a culture where the most dangerous people are given the biggest platforms to speak and lead. We are building a future on a foundation of sand, guided by those who refuse to look at the tide. This is where the pattern becomes a systemic threat that we can no longer afford to simply laugh at. The modern world rewards the hunter who shouts, but the forest is now far too complex for such noise. The most unsettling realization is that removing one incompetent leader only creates a vacuum for another to fill. Our collective survival instinct is so deeply tied to the need for a strong figure that we repeat the cycle. You may now recognize the mechanics of the trap, but the biological pull toward a confident voice remains intact. Even with the clearest data, the human heart often chooses the comfort of a lie over the terror of uncertainty. Understanding the psychological origin of power does not make you immune to the sway of a charismatic, bold presence. Most people first notice this pattern in someone close to them, but they rarely see it in themselves. We all have moments where we perform a confidence we do not possess to avoid looking weak or small. This mask is not a flaw we can simply discard. It is a structural necessity for navigating a competitive social world. The tension between our need for truth and our need for safety is a permanent part of our humanity. There is no simple organizational fix or personality test that can fully sanitize our leadership structures from this glitch. As long as we reward the appearance of strength, those who are best at pretending will always rise to the top. We are left with the crushing weight of knowing that our guides are often as lost as we are. The hidden self is a master of disguise, convincing us that this time, the person in charge is truly different. Reflect on the leaders you currently trust and ask if you value their skills or their lack of visible doubt. This awareness offers no relief, only a sharper sense of the fragility inherent in every human institution and group. You are now standing in a space of unresolved clarity, watching the theater of power with a new, heavy understanding. The cycle continues not because we are foolish, but because we are biologically unable to stand entirely alone in the dark. We are participants in a play where the script was written by our ancestors' fears and our own modern insecurities. The closing of this examination is not an end, but a gateway into an even deeper psychological struggle. Staying with uncomfortable psychological truth is the only way to witness the world as it truly functions beneath the surface. Join a space where unspoken patterns are examined honestly, without the need for a comforting or simple resolution today. Choosing awareness over avoidance means accepting the permanent shadow that follows every person who dares to lead the way. The pattern of the incompetent leader is just the visible tip of a much larger iceberg of human social interaction. Beneath the quest for power, an even more complex layer regarding how we construct our own moral justifications. We often believe we choose our leaders based on values, yet those values are frequently shaped by a deeper fear. This leads us to a psychological idea that remains entirely unresolved. Are we ever truly following a person, or just a ghost? There is a hidden connection between our need for authority and our inability to trust our own internal moral compass. Understanding this dynamic changes how every other human behavior is perceived, from our friendships to our global social structures. Perhaps the true leader is the one who acknowledges the void, yet we are the ones who refuse to listen.